This week on the podcast, you get to meet someone whose online content I began following years ago when the idea of creating my own website was just beginning to form. Back then, his podcast called Do You Even Blog was all about blogging, SEO, and monetizing a website. I later met him at FinCon, and I've watched him launch multiple websites, YouTube channels, software companies, and services over the years, always in awe of his ability to try new things, pivot quickly, and be probably the most down-to-earth person I've ever met. His name is Pete McPherson. As we talk today, it might be helpful for you to take a few minutes to find out your Enneagram number. I couldn't remember mine, and you'll hear me guess in the episode, but I'm actually an Enneagram 1. There are a couple of resources in the show notes to help you discover your Enneagram number because, as Pete and I highlight, it can inform not just how deeply you understand yourself or why you do business the way you do, but the level of guilt or stress that you carry and what you might be able to do about it. All right, Pete, thanks so much for being here with me today. I want to start out by hearing what your definition of abundance is.
Thank you so much for having me, Virginia. As I told you off air, I am super excited to not only hang out on the podcast, but also catch up and talk with you. Hopefully I can drop some knowledge bombs along the way. So my definition of abundance is no stress and no anxiety. So I think if you looked up the dictionary definition of abundance, I don't really know what it would say, to be frank. But in my head, I think of the word enough. I have enough money, success, time, energy, that sort of thing. And a lot of my background in life since my teenage years has seen a lot of stress and anxiety. I'm a naturally stressful person. I am anxious. I'm a worrier all the time. And it's only been the past few years where I have really, quite literally, sat down and thought through my business and thought through my life and tried to figure out less stress, less anxiety. What does that look like? What do I need to do? How do I need to act? Who do I need to be? And the first thing I thought about was this. When I just reading your podcast title, Abundance, right there in the name. That's what it is for me. It's reaching a point in my life. I was going to say work life or work-life balance. That's just dumb. It's just life. Reaching a point in my life where I don't have to think so much about stress and anxiety.
Yeah. Okay, so I love that you sat down and thought specifically about that question, about what that looks like, and mapped out, how do I remove stress from my life? I think that's a big planning puzzle that a lot of business owners completely miss. We're all talking about, how we're going to market our business this next year and how are we going to, hit our numbers and what's the strategic plan and all of that. But that piece of, okay, sure, hit all your goals and do all those things, but how do you also reduce stress in your life? Yeah. I think that we're missing that completely. Would you be able to just give us a couple tips on your process, on how you did that, what you did, what did that look like?
Absolutely. Let me give you just a 2-minute story first, or not a story per se, but another insight.
Yeah.
I guess that I've learned. I don't remember where I heard this, but in the past couple of years, maybe it's a book, maybe it's a podcast, I heard something to the effect of for those who are married or have children or have family in general, when that part of your life is going well, everything else just works. Or at least, to a degree, right? Happy marriage, happy life, right? You hear that. That's hashtag Instagram story right there. Happy marriage, happy life. I personally think there's one step even before that. I am married. I do have kids. I have a business. I have a house. I have a dog who's running outside my window right now. In order to serve them, by the way, and serve my customers, serve my audience, in order to serve them, I have to be in a good place, somewhat. I don't have to be perfect all the time. I don't have to be happy every single moment of every day. But for me personally, stress and anxiety lead to worse decision makings for me. It leads to fatigue where I can't work as much, even if I want to. It leads to more burnout. It leads to more boredom. And these things affect all of the rest of my life. So I just want to say, I think about this from a first principle approach. People can Google that if you're not entirely sure what first principle means, but really, who do I need to be in order to best serve my wife and to be the best dad and to be the best podcast guest and so on and so forth? Again, everybody's different, but for me personally, a lot of that starts with starting to get rid of stress and anxiety. So going back to your original question, tips, how I deal with that sort of stuff, the 2-minute story was actually going to be about 13 months ago. I had my first invasive procedure. I was going to say surgery. It wasn't really. And looking back now, it's easy to minimize. But at the time, I thought I had heart problems. I was experiencing chest pain. Like for months, on and off. And it was weird. It was different. It was never the same. And it was here and it was there. It was on, it was off. I went to my doctor. I went to a cardiologist. I had a stress test, like a treadmill where they got all the things like hooked up to you, like in a movie or something. I'd never been through any of this in my entire life. And I'm going through this over the course of like a month. And it ended up me having a heart cath, which people can go Google what it is. It's kind of weird to talk about. It turns out I'm fine. And, okay, I'm good. I'm not going to have a heart attack like on air right now.
Which is great. Thank you.
But going through that process, it's exactly like people say in the movies. It gives you perspective. That I was literally told by my cardiologist, he's like, it's probably not going to happen, but there's a chance you will die on the table. Like there's a non-zero chance. It wasn't very high. It's not like a 30% chance. It was extremely low, but he's like, I just have to tell you, there's a non-zero chance. You're just going to die during this invasive procedure. And my mind was like, I have literally never thought about this ever in my life. Like I feel like I'm young. I'm not super young, but I'm young enough. And it was weird. So, okay, story over. Go to your actual question. I'll get around to something helpful eventually. There's a lot, right? I could write a whole blog post on how I have personally found success, de-stressing, less anxiety or whatnot. Part of it, I'm not going to lie, has been getting my business to earning enough money. I don't make bajillions of dollars, and I don't think I need to, but it earns enough money where I don't have to think about finances every second of every day. And it wasn't always like that. And I know that's stressful. Like I've been in that spot. I got laid off after one paycheck, which maybe I can tell you my origin story in a minute. But like I know what money stress is very well. I've experienced it for years. And it's really only the past like 3 years-ish that I'm starting to go to a point where I'm like, I haven't really even thought about money. So the answer is, you know the answer. Your audience already knows the answer too. Like personal finance to some degree. It's not going to happen overnight. We all know it's hard. I'm totally preaching to the choir. But for me personally, earning enough it's just been wonderful. It's proven miraculous over the past couple of years. That's number one. Number two, I don't want to dive into the Enneagram. Do you know your Enneagram number, Virginia?
I think I'm a 7.
Okay. I'm not one of
I can't remember. I haven't taken it in a long time.
Okay. I'm not one of the people that has all of them memorized, and I can tell you your middle name just based on your Enneagram number. I'm not one of those people. But I did read a book like 7 years ago. I'm an Enneagram 3 wing 4. If anybody wants to go look it up. The point is, this book told me a bunch of things, who I am. I agreed with most of them. And one of their top recommendations was to meditate. So we hear about meditation all the time. People are like, oh yeah, I should meditate more. Well, I've always been one of those people, right? Like, oh, that sounds nice. I would like to meditate more. Maybe that helps. Maybe it doesn't. I don't like meditating. I hate it. I hate setting reminders to do it. I hate the meditation apps. I hate the actual time spent meditating. I don't like it. I'm super impatient. I get bored really easily. My mind wanders, whatever. But finally getting into a routine practice of meditation where it's not just about the 10 minutes that I sit down, but it's about the act of doing it every day for prolonged periods of time, I found that to be incredibly helpful. And I'm sure that would probably be the case with everybody. So don't worry too much about the Enneagram thing. But the way I think about work specifically work, not just life, but specifically work, I need to meditate. It's not just a nice to have, it's a must have. Else I will burn out 10 times quicker. I will be so much more stressed in my daily, I have to do this, my to-do list, that sort of thing. So honestly, those are my two answers right there. I know they're a little bit cliche, but getting a little bit of cushion, not even a lot, a little bit of cushion where my finances are in order. I don't have to stress over that every day. And then developing a practice of meditation over the long run. Again, I hate doing it in the moment, but over the long run, that's proven helpful as well.
Yeah. Okay. So while you're talking about this, I'm thinking about just the entrepreneurial, emotional, and I don't know, I was going to say physical, but it's not physical, but like just the roller coaster that it is to run a business, right? And so often do we not ignore one category or another, but think, oh, well, I'll deal with that later. Like I have to do this right now. And we'll prioritize what we think is urgent. And maybe that does push our meditation off, or maybe that does push our personal finance spreadsheet to tomorrow or something like that, right? It's known that it's not easy to be a business owner, but I think even more so, you just picked out like a couple of really key things that if we just get back to the basics and focus on mental health and your own personal finances, those two things will influence a variety of other things. And they're kind of like the baseline of if you're not in a good place, if you feel like it's a struggle right now, whatever it is, and you can address those couple of things, other things will get better as a result. Just because you meditated, right? It's not a quick fix. It's not an immediate thing. But like this year, even for me, I was kind of in a rough place over the summer, and I hired a coach. And, yes, it's primarily for business, but she's also been helping me with some life stuff and some emotional stuff and some, the fact that I really actually need to step outside and have sunshine for like 10 minutes a day. Like it's a need for me. And I had ignored that for so long. And I think a lot of business owners do something like what you were talking about, where we choose not to meditate, even though it's like highly recommended for our personality type, or don't go outside because, well, I just want to like work through my lunch break and I got to get something done, instead of going and just sitting in the sun. Like that 10 minutes is invaluable in ways that it doesn't equal 10 minutes. It equals like hours of productivity and optimism and other benefits. So you mentioned your origin story, and I would love to hear it. I have watched you over the years, and I'm not even sure the full story behind why you started Do You Even Blog, but I do want to get into that because that's how I first met you. There was this fun-sounding guy that I thought was like maybe close to my age, and okay, I'm commuting to work and I'm interested in this online space. And so he's talking about blogging, but he's on a podcast, so I'm kind of confused, like which one should I do? And so, but yeah, tell me how you got started, and then give me the fast forward of all the pivots and where you are now.
Yeah. If I have time at the end of this episode, remind me, I wrote it down so I didn't forget.
Okay.
Be that person now. Just remind me. We'll come back to that. Mm-hmm. But the origin story, I want to talk about myself some more. So I'll give you the short version, because I could tell the long version. I don't think I need to, because I spoiled a little bit of it. So
we might not have time, because it's been years. It's been like 10 years that I've been following you.
It's true.
Yeah.
10? Really? 10? No, it hasn't been 10 years. I guarantee it.
I'm trying to figure out like when you launched Do You Even Blog, and then that would tell us. But that's okay. You could get into that.
June 1, 2017. That's the official date.
Really?
So let's talk about the years before that. I never knew what I wanted to be when I grew up.
Okay.
Some people wanted to be doctors and lawyers or teachers or musicians. I actually thought I wanted to be a musician for a little while. Yeah, it didn't really work out. I had gone through 5 different college majors, actually 6 now that I think about it, including music, by the way, and business and Italian, like the language. I was an Italian major, flunked every single class that semester, and they kicked me out of the University of Georgia. Anyways, I ended up graduating with a degree in sociology because I found it interesting, and everybody told me, hey, get a college degree. You're done. You're fine. You're set. You can make money. You can get a job. Well, that was 2007, 2008 in the financial crisis, and no one was hiring anybody, much less bachelor's of sociology degrees. Useless, right? So I went back to school after speaking with family and some advisors for accounting, and I actually really enjoyed it. I enjoyed accounting. I got my master's degree. I got my CPA license. I got my first grown-up job, making $52,000 a year, which was more money than I'd ever dreamed of in my entire life. And I started right during busy season, tax season for accountants. Is 60, 70, sometimes like 75-hour weeks. And I kind of liked it. I kind of didn't. Over the next 4 years, I wanted to do more. Wasn't feeling fulfilled, for lack of a better phrase. And quite frankly, I was commuting hours every day. It's just, I'm stuck in the car. I like listening to podcasts as much as the next person, but I was having a child, like my firstborn son, and like I didn't want to be in the car for 2.5 hours a day. It was awful. So I started trying to get out. Started my first podcast in 2009, technically. It was awful. You can still go listen to it, by the way. Actually don't. No, it's terrible. Anyways, I started blogs. I started e-com businesses. Nothing, no success, right? I'm just like starting things and figuring out WordPress and learning that there is a world outside of a corporate 9-to-5. Discovering this, right? For the very first time, starting this, starting that, building websites. I was having a lot of fun. Didn't make a dime, by the way. I eventually wanted to quit and do this full time, even though I was not making any money. And I found a solution. I was going to take a job at a startup where I only had to work half time and they're going to pay me money. And the other half of the time I can, entrepreneurship, right? So I did that. We sold our house, my wife and I. She quit her work. I quit my job. We moved across the state of Georgia back to my hometown. And I got laid off after one paycheck.
Oh, man.
Yeah, right? From this crappy startup. So at this point, the origin of Do You Even Blog is born. I was basically reaching out to people like, hey, can we have a phone call? Can we Skype? I just need to ask you, how do I do this? I started in personal finance because I had a personal finance blog. It doesn't exist today. It was not great. But I had met people in the finance community. And so those are the people I reached out to first. They were making money. They were bloggers and creators and podcasters. And I was like, please just tell me how. Help me understand. And luckily, I had enough foresight to record those conversations. Okay. And that was the Do You Even Blog podcast. The first, I don't know how many episodes, maybe 10, 12, 15 episodes were all those people who I'd known before. And I was basically just asking them, please tell me how you do what you do. And that was it.
Awesome.
So I'm a fast forward now. That was June 1, 2017, when the podcast launched. 17 days after my second child was born, my daughter was born. So I had an infant at home and trying to start this business and figure things out. It was awful. It was rough, but it showed enough potential to keep going with it. And I kept pushing off I'm going to go back to accounting and get a real job and get a salary again. I kept pushing it off for another month and then another 3 months. And then that was, 8 years ago. And here I am. So in that time, I've started well over 25 blogs, 4 or 5 podcasts. I think I have 3 YouTube channels right now. I have been coding more and more. I have 3 active SaaS companies and a bunch of other smaller SaaS products that I build and I might sell. And then I hang out with Virginia on her podcast. That's it. You're the very tail end of my story right now.
Yeah, it's up to the moment, right?
That's true. I was right.
So I love this because, yes, even as you were having those conversations, what you didn't know, of course, was someone was listening and trying to figure it out too. And that was me. And while I hadn't yet quit my job and wasn't quite in the same spot you were, I was learning like, oh, there's people out there that, talk about personal finance, that have interests like I do, that blog about them or YouTube or, podcast about them. And how, like it didn't compute at the time how someone could make money by talking online and not actually having what you quote unquote is a real job. So we share the accounting background. I was in audit and I would drive to work every day. And, between you, I would listen to Joe Saul-Sehy back then, Paula Pant, some of the bigger personal finance podcasts, but then also some of this content that was like, how do you do this? How do you do what they're doing? And then over the years, I've clicked on various affiliate links of yours. I've bought,
Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's always good stuff. More recently, I used Fab AI, one of your AI blog generating SaaS products. And yeah, I'm always curious about what you're doing, what's going on, and what's the thought behind the pivot that I'm seeing on the outside. So do you want to take us through a couple of those pivot points?
Yeah, I call this being intentionally unfocused. So I am a dabbler. I'm a tinkerer. I am a generalist. Generalist meaning I tend to do everything all the time and learn anything all day, every day. Actually, a friend of mine, I don't know if you remember her, she used to be in personal finance. Chelsea, she had Smart Money Mamas and so on and so forth. She actually sent me a message recently, and she's like, do you know how to juggle? I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, we actually just thought of your name. It was like, who probably knows how to juggle? That's Pete.
It's Pete.
And I was like, well, yes, I do. And she's like, can you do Rubik's Cube? And I was like, yes, I do. I'm a generalist. I don't like being bored. Nobody likes being bored, but I tend to move really fast through subjects in life. And in a lot of cases, I don't go deep enough on, for example, my education. I always did just enough to get by so I could do something else. I didn't care really about good grades. I didn't really care about sociology that much. I was a great musician. I was not a world-class musician. I probably could have been if I had if I went deeper there, but I didn't. I probably could have made Do You Even Blog a 7-figure business, but I didn't. And I didn't really care to. I tend to be the person where if I am not actively interested in something, I am stubborn enough to not do it. One of my kids is the opposite of that. Doesn't matter. And one of my kids is exactly like me. If he doesn't want to do anything, there's no amount of prodding or incentivizing or nothing. And that's the same with me. I don't want to be focused on a specific business, project, idea, niche, topic. It's not me. It took me forever to realize that, but I just don't want to be focused in that regard. So another personal finance person, Rosemary Groner is her name. She actually sat me down. Actually, it was in 2017, a couple of months after I started. And she's like, look, I love your show. She was showering me with compliments. And she's like, I actually think you have what it takes to do some great stuff. And I think you might go far. And I was like, breathing this compliments. Oh my God, build my confidence. And she's like, I'm going to be really frank. I don't see it happening because you lack focus. And it's like, if you want to get a grip on something that's going to quote unquote, make you more successful or up your chances at success, it's focus. I need you to be focused. And she was right, by the way. She was totally right. She nailed me, and it felt like crap, and my confidence was destroyed. But no, she was absolutely right, and it was really great advice. And I did that for years, and it worked, and she was right, and it grew, and I don't regret any of those things. And then 2020 happened, and burnout happened, And I hated what I did. I hated what I talked about. It felt worse than like accounting even. It's like, this is not me. It is so hard. I don't have responsibility to do this, and I don't want to do this. And every fiber of my being does not want to do you even blog? I was talking about blogging, SEO, niche sites, that sort of stuff. Didn't care. Just didn't care anymore.
Just done with it.
Just done with it. And so there were trials and tribulations, which I'm happy to talk about if you want me to. But to fast forward through that, I eventually had to rethink who I am and what I want to be when I grow up, still to this day, right? And it took me years, but at this point, I am intentionally unfocused. And here's some practical stuff with that. And just let me keep talking for a second. I think it's important. There's a few things that this means. Actually, there's like 2 or 3 big things. Number one, I don't start projects that don't have an end date, period. There's no more Do You Even blogs. There's no more, I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to get some guests because I think it'll be cool and maybe I can earn some money. If there's no end date, if there's no like, here's how this thing stops, here's how it ends, I don't do it. I can't do it anymore because it lingers. I feel guilty going outside for 10 minutes to get some vitamin D when I should be working on this thing. I need to send an email this week and I haven't done the email this week and I feel guilty about not sending the email this week. And anybody who's self-employed has had these feelings. I guarantee it. Now imagine starting new projects and new projects and new projects and having all that crap sit there. I just can't do it. So again, it's taken years to kind of like wind these down, but that's rule number 1 for me. There's no end date. I don't do it. Period. And number 2 is I don't do it unless I have the trifecta. The trifecta. This is so silly, but I love this. About 2 years ago, I created a spreadsheet and I listed out all the projects I was currently working on and all the ideas I had for new projects and new businesses and new YouTube channels or whatever it was. I was so overwhelmed. And I was like, I'm going to do the numbers on this. I've never really done this before, but I'm like, okay, what do I need here? Okay, potential to make money. That's one. Like just a little bit of money, $100 a month, $300 a month, $1,000 a month. Like what are the chances that this business, this project, this idea, this blog, this thing makes me a little bit of money? 1 to 10. I would write it down. I'd write it down. I'd write it down. And then I was like, okay, what else? Okay, what are the chances this business, this project, this idea makes a crap ton of money? Like retire forever sort of money. Can I get like a $5 million buyout from creating this? What are the chances of that happening? Scale of 1 to 10. And then the third one, it seems super obvious to me at the time, but I'd never really thought about this. How much energy do I have for this right now? Not next week, not next month, but right now. Scale of 1 to 10. And I created a little weighting system. So I'll go into this spreadsheet. I literally have it right now. I'm looking at it. I'll literally go in here like once a month. I'll kind of update what I'm working on, what I'm not. And I'll change the percentage, the weight that each one of those 3 things carries, right? Sometimes I care more about money. Sometimes I'm a little bit more stressed about money, maybe. Other times I'm like, I really don't have a lot of motivation right now. So realistically, I can only work on the things that I'm really interested in, that I'm jazzed about, that I'm stoked to start or to finish or whatever that is. And so I'll change those weights. And then that's it. Like I live by this now. I was actually pulling it up. My current weights, this was like, that's 2 weeks ago I was in here. Energy is 45%. Small money, like earning a little bit each month, is 35%. And then big money, I don't really care so much about right now. It's 20%. So if you add those up, that's 100%. So I get a weighted average of those three things, and that is what I do for my work. My projects, my businesses, my apps, everything. That's it.
That's awesome. So now
and by the way, last thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Last thing. I love it. And it's working. I have so many projects. I have so many businesses. It sounds overwhelming. And sometimes when I wake up in the morning and I look at this spreadsheet, it is totally overwhelming, but I love it and I live for it. And I wake up every morning excited on whatever it is I'm working about most days. That was not around 3 years ago or 4 years ago or 5 years ago. It's never been around. And if I were any sort of guilty about not being focused, this would not work. I had to like reframe. I was trying to think of a metaphor. I'm wearing glasses right now. The lens. I had to get a different lens on my work and how that affects my life. And it took me years to kind of like work this out. But now I look at things totally differently and I've never been happier.
Wow. I love all of that. That is so cool. I love that now you don't start projects unless they have an end date, because I think we all always create some new endeavor, some new task, some new thing. And we don't actually realize, like, without saying it out loud, I'm thinking that I'm just going to do this every week until eternity. That actually doesn't make sense. Like, why do we do that to ourselves? It's so weird. But until you started talking about this, I didn't realize that either. So thank you. And I love this analytical way of evaluating what's important to you and how you've completely reversed this advice that we all receive to be extremely focused, right? And you've made entrepreneurship work for you in a way that allows you to be yourself. And it's supporting you now because, yeah, we've all received like, be focused, do what makes you money. Like, are you doing your money-making activities today, right? Like, what if the activities that are on my plate at the moment, I'm not that excited about anymore, right? And I think that's what you have gone through is in some of these pivots, you're like, yeah, sure, maybe it made me money, but I'm so unhappy doing it. Like, I don't want it to make me money anymore, basically. I'm sick of it. Right?
Well, this is what you first asked me, like about abundance, right? Mm-hmm. It's not always easy, or it's not always right to quote unquote follow your passions, follow your dreams, go through the little trifecta spreadsheet and only work on the things that you're super fired up about. It's not always right. And it never will be always right unless I win $1 billion tomorrow and I literally just could do anything I want, period, for the rest of my life. That'd be awesome, by the way. But I'm not there yet. I'm not super rich mega millionaires. I still have to work. I can't take a year off. That's not me, right? But I wrote this down earlier and I told you I could come back to it. Be that person now is actually what I wrote down. I feel like part of the FIRE movement, right? Financially independent, retire early. Why wait until you are old and gray to retire? I think there's a lot of value in this. Part of it, for me personally, was like, why wait until you're financially independent to retire? I like work. Some people don't like work. I love work. I love figuring out ways to make money. I love the projects I do. I like coding. I like building. I like selling. All those things. I don't think if I did that $1 billion thing tomorrow, I think I would still work. Maybe not the same things all the time, but I would still do a lot of that. So for me personally, I was able to, again, this is a super shortcut. I could spend 3 hours talking about this, and it took years. But eventually, I started asking myself the question through a business coach who prompted me through this, by the way. I'm not smart enough to think about this. Who do you want to be? Who do you want to be 10 years from now? Who do you want to be when you retire? What does retirement look like? If you want to work in retirement, like Pete says he does, okay, what does that look like? What does your ideal day look like? What time do you wake up? How do you spend that time? What projects are you working on? All the stuff, right? And then eventually, I kind of figured out there's nothing stopping me from being that person now. Abundance, what you mentioned at the very top, for me, that's super important. I have to have enough to where I don't immediately fall into cycles of stress and anxiety. But once I hit that point, and it's been that way for several years now, there's not really any good excuses for not living my life the way I want. That sounds weird, right? It sounds a little selfish to even say it like that. Like I play pickleball 3 times a week. for like a couple of hours.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time away from work, away from my computer. I actually work all that much anymore. There's not really a good excuse to not do that for me. It's not always like that. There are times when I feel responsibilities and I do work more to hit some goal or some objective, or I have business partners now who I'm like responsible to, which is kind of weird. It kind of sucks in one way. But there are times when I work like that, and there are times when I don't. Mm-hmm. And I think coming to this realization years ago that I can actually be like 90% of my dream person. Who do I want to be? I could be that person now. I don't have to wait until I make millions. I don't have to wait until my kids are out of the house, like in college. I don't have to wait for a bunch of these things. I can actually do it now.
Yeah.
Barring some other excuses.
Yeah. I love that.
I'll shut my mouth. I was going to keep talking. I'm not going to.
No. I'm enjoying it because I think this is some of the like behind the scenes mind jabber that we are fielding constantly of like, well, you know, I'm struggling with my mental health or my energy levels or this, but I have to make money, but I'm obligated for this reason or that reason or whatever it is. And, you know, we're supposed to be focused, but I am really curious about this project over here. And like, what if I could start that business and that would make more money or like whatever. And so I think what it all came down to is you started to learn about your personality type and embrace that and not like fight those tendencies that are integral to you as a person. You worked with a coach to help you walk through this idea of what this could look like for you now instead of out in the future. And then you started to just like take action toward all these different things in like an analyzed, structured way that still made sense. It wasn't like you were just going to throw anything that made money out the window and just do what made you feel energetically great, right? You were still thoughtful about what's important, and you've just like come into your own self, just, you know, becoming more Pete instead of, I don't know, what society thought you were supposed to be.
So in my desk right now, I have a bunch of sticky notes. I actually have, I won't even tell you how many packs of blank sticky notes I have because I don't like running out of sticky notes. I have a lot. I was just writing on some for this podcast. I don't see them. I think I'm in the wrong drawer right now.
There was a bit where you were doing like, I think it was on YouTube, like the sticky note of the day. And I just remember the shot of your sticky note that you wrote. Again, you know, I'll like pop into your channel. Yeah. So there's just different things I've seen from you over the years.
But I was going to say, in my drawer down here, I have sticky notes that I wrote years ago that are kind of like my version of affirmations. Some of them are actually literal affirmations that maybe other people said to me, maybe my wife, maybe friends on the internet or whatnot. I have one from my friend Raina who just says, wise Pete. And you mentioned a second ago, I don't remember what you said. You said like becoming the best
More
version
Pete,
of yourself, or the best Pete imaginable or whatever. That's what I think about whenever I look at the sticky note. It just says wise Pete. I won't tell you the full story behind it, but when I see that, I'm reminded to, okay, what would wise Pete do in this scenario? It's like the old WWJD bracelets, if you remember those.
I remember
what
those.
would wise Pete do?
Yeah.
And I just like glance at these things every now and then. I have some of them stuck to like behind my monitor where I'll just see them occasionally. Like I have these little sticky notes everywhere that just remind me of things I've learned from other people over the years. That kind of like just helped me with that. Anyways, you didn't ask about that, but just a funny aside.
It just, I mean, everybody needs their own method, right? If you have a whiteboard, I mean, you could see that's a whiteboard that you're supposed to write on with markers. But did I write on it? No, I just put sticky notes over it. So you just need your own method of what reminds you of what stands out to you? Like occasionally I will have stuff all over the desk of like all these kind of like what you're saying, affirmations, notes, that type of thing. And then I'll feel like it's cluttered and I'll get rid of a bunch of stuff and, you know, kind of feel good about a fresh start. Like we all just have to continue to figure out what works best for us based on our personality and lean into that with whatever we're doing. I want to dig in a little bit about all the different businesses and endeavors that you have going. And this entire time, whether you're creating a SaaS company or whatever you're up to, you've always done online content creation in some form or fashion, whether it's been blogging, you've mentioned multiple YouTube channels, podcasts. What is it that ensures you that you have to be creating some level of online content all the time? Like, why do you create online content?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I actually think part of it is great that I produce a lot of content. And another part of it is totally unhealthy.
Okay.
I'm not kidding.
Take us through this.
Yes. So look at me mentioning the Enneagram 2 times in one podcast, Virginia. Yeah. This is ridiculous. Part of Enneagram 3s or even Enneagram 4s. Again, I don't remember the names of half the stuff. I just know that this is me at this point.
Well, people are going to go look it up at this point. They're going to be like, all right, what is my Enneagram? Am I like Pete or am I like Virginia? Like, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. I like to appear productive and successful. All of us like to appear successful. True. For sure. But I think Enneagram's 3 more than other people. I feel the most productive when I produce content on the internet. I will get through a week of work coding, and I love building stuff. I love code. I love apps. I love that sort of stuff. But I will get to a week of crushing through an app, and I will literally have like a new business that people could pay for, and it's pretty, and it works, and all that stuff. I will not feel productive. I'll be like, I don't feel like I did a daggone thing this week.
Wow.
But you know what? I can produce an email or a podcast episode or something, and I'm like, oh, time to relax. Pete's done his job, his duty to the world today. Like, it makes me feel productive. And it's not healthy in some ways. I'm just being really honest here. But that is a lot of the driving force. Now, the other one, okay, I just want to be completely upfront and truthful about that. It's not. But another part of it for me is it's fun. I like it. You mentioned the sticky note series, which is not an official name. It's just something I thought of like a couple of months ago. I kept asking myself the question, like, can I actually niche up or niche up, niche down? You hear this all the time. Niche down, go more specific. You're going to start a podcast on this, niche down, be specific, right? Find a specific audience. Your marketing is going to be easier. Your sales are going to be easier. All that's true, by the way. But I had a list of topic ideas that didn't fall into any niche that I was doing. And I was like, I can help people with this stuff. I roast my own coffee. Do you roast your own coffee, Virginia?
No, I don't.
Do you drink coffee?
Yes.
Do you like coffee?
Yes. That sounds so interesting.
Yes.
So interesting. Okay.
A couple of months ago, I did a deep dive, and I mean way too deep, on dishwashers. You can ask me anything you want to know about the proper dishwasher technique. I know the answers to it because I nerded out for about 48 hours. I watched entirely too many YouTube videos, and I wanted to do this sticky note series thing on just dishwashers. And 5 minutes or less you can just remember that sticky note. Whatever I write down here, I can make your life better if you do dishes. And one of them was, actually, a couple of people actually emailed me asking about passkeys a couple of weeks ago because passwords, two-factor authentication. I keep seeing these passkeys. What the heck is that? I don't understand. And I didn't understand either. I was like, I don't know, but I like learning things. I'm going to go find out. And so that one was a little sloppy because I'm not an expert for sure. But I tried to do the sticky note series on, again, like 100 seconds or less. I can tell you what these things are. And now you know what passkeys are. When you try and log into something and it asks you if you want to do that, now you know. So again, I like creating content. It's fun for me. It makes me feel productive, which isn't always healthy. But at the end of the day, I love doing it. I love video. I love text. I love audio. I love everything. I love presentations. I love slides. I love public speaking. I'm not the best in the world at any of those things, but I do enjoy it.
So I like how you highlighted, okay, I can code all week. I can make an app. People can buy it. It can make money. That's a huge accomplishment. I don't know anyone else in my real life that can do that and can say that confidently in a week like that. So that's a big deal. It's not really funny, but funny to me that you can say that. That's a huge accomplishment, but that you don't feel productive. You don't feel accomplished. But then you can create a podcast episode or a newsletter or whatever. And okay, now I feel good. So that highlights this almost dangerous cycle that is very possible for a lot of online entrepreneurs, where you can kind of get swept away in creating content without really knowing how to monetize that content.
Or without a long-term vision.
Right. And you just create, you're having a great time, you buy a new camera and you do this thing and you start this, whatever, and it's awesome. And I'm a content creator. Okay, but that's kind of like what created the narrative of this person working in their basement that makes no money that has, a bazillion followers on their YouTube channel. So it's like this balance for all of us of, hey, this makes me money. I'm, attracting leads, or I'm helping people, I'm informing, I'm educating over here. I've got to have a balance of both, or I've got to make the one serve the other in some way. So how have you continued? Because now it sounds like you have it figured out. Like you're very conscious of like, this makes me money. This checks my box of achievement.
I don't have it figured out.
Well, no, I'm sure it was way less figured out, even just as you've navigated these different pivots and businesses over the years.
Yes and no. So this is actually a really good point. I'm glad you brought this up. I don't have any answers to this right now in my life. So I think it's, I was about to compare creating content on the internet to like a heroin addiction. I think that's an awful comparison. I've never done heroin, so I am totally unqualified to talk about this. Yeah, well, the point is small dopamine hits. Mm-hmm. So when I put out an email, as long as it's somewhat useful in some way, it gives me like this little hit of I did something today. I helped people today, even if it doesn't make me money short term or long term. If it doesn't help me grow the business, or if I didn't learn anything or whatever, it made me feel this little hit of dopamine in my brain. It's not always a good thing. And so I mentioned the sticky note series on coffee. I mentioned dishwashers. Like that email's written, but I still haven't sent it. And I will one day. Don't get me wrong. But at the moment, I am still trying to figure out my brand, the overall brand. Would you like to hear my 3 levels of focus? Would that be interesting to you?
Yeah.
Okay. This is relevant. So this was in my my FinCon talk a couple of weeks ago. I had never really thought that much about it, but there are 3 levels of focus, the way I see it. The top level focus is stuff that you don't even choose a lot of times. My wife loves music. She's a world-class musician. She's played all over the world. She's sang all over the world. She's teaching music right now in our small town. It's a little bit different. She is never in her entire life not going to do music. She doesn't get to choose that at this point. She chose it 20 years ago. She's good. She's helpful. She sounds lovely. She's interested in it. It's fun. It's her life's calling. She might get a different job. She might start her own business one day doing something. I don't know. But she's always going to do that. For me, I will always, I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure, I'm always going to want to serve creators and entrepreneurs. Note that I didn't use creatorpreneurs because it kind of bugs me when people use that.
Yeah, I don't like that either.
But that is accurate in this case. That's my audience, creators and entrepreneurs. Almost everything I've done over the past decade has been to serve those people, and I haven't really even been thinking about it. that's just my calling, right? This is the top level focus. It's like your life focus. Some people, maybe it is finance for them. Maybe it's their kids. Maybe it's politics. Maybe go serve on your local board. Or some people have this overall calling that they almost don't even choose. This is what they're going to do, period. That's level 1. Level 2, we're going to come back to because I suck at it. Level 2 focus. But there's a third, level 3 focus. It's like the micro focus. It's like I woke up, I had my delicious cup of coffee, I got my kids off to school, my spouse is away at work or in another room or whatever. It is time to work. You open up your laptop or whatever that is. What happens over the next hour, over the next 3 hours? What happens in that 8-hour workday? That's the third level of focus. And that's what my FinCon talk was about, first and foremost. That was like this micro level of focus of like maximizing efficiency when you decide it is time to work. Not that you should work 80 hours a week or rise and grind at 5 a.m. Not that. But when that laptop opens and you know you want to work or you need to work, what happens? That's third level. The second level of focus is working on growing Do You Even blog, even though I wanted to start other projects. The second level of focus is how do I fit in the sticky notes series on passkeys, on roasting your own coffee at home, on dishwashers, on pickleball, on, I swear to God, Virginia, I have a list of like 40 different topics that I'm like, I think people might actually be interested and learn something here.
Yeah.
How do I work that into my existing email list, my existing audience? How do I work that into my brand? I can send out an email on this, on dishwashers. It's going to give me a dopamine hit that I did something today. I'm going to feel productive. Some people might even get value out of it. I'm not sure it serves me for the long term. I'm not sure it grows the brand. If you want to think about my personal brand or whatever, I don't know yet. I don't have a lot of those answers. There's just this second level of focus that I have historically, it's what Rosemary Groner wanted me to do, which was stick with Do You Even blog. But eventually I decided like, that's not me. I need to figure out this other like second level of focus. I don't know. I don't have those answers. I don't know if that was interesting or useful or not, but I just thought I'd share.
No, it is, because I think this is often the brand owner's biggest struggle. So I don't think you're alone in this, where we created a business. It looks a certain way. It presents a certain way. It has its own handle on Instagram, whatever. But there's so much more to us than those colors, that font, those specific, top 4 columns of content that we talk about, whatever, right? There's so much more to us as humans than what we feel fits into that brand's pretty little box. And we're all constantly trying to ask ourselves, like, well, is it okay if I post about my kids once in a while on my business Instagram page? Is it okay if I talk about pickleball in my newsletter this week? Because while I was playing pickleball, I thought of this thing and I think it might help my people. Or, we're all constantly trying to integrate those interests because we are multidimensional humans that have all kinds of interests into this tight little box that we've created as far as, what our brand and business looks like and our ideal client and focus, right? All this focus that we're supposed to have. I will tell you, my husband's wanted a new dishwasher for probably a couple years. So I will gladly take your email, sir. So right? There's that. Yeah. But this is the constant struggle. So while we haven't really gotten into, why you podcast or really online content creation, like tips or anything like that, we've really spent this conversation highlighting the importance of knowing ourselves, knowing what fires us up in the morning and what gets us excited, and being able to lean into those things, and just constant challenges that we all have as far as what to talk about, when to talk about, what to focus on, what to do when we open our laptop. Do I have time to meditate? What am I going to do with all these sticky notes? Like, your struggles are not just yours. I will say that. I think that's super important.
I just thought about this. Everything we've said on this podcast, and this is a credit to you, by the way. This is a credit to you. Everything we've said on this podcast will be as relevant a year, 3 and 5 years from now as it is right this second today.
Absolutely.
If you had asked me on tips to grow your podcast, that wouldn't be the case. If you'd asked me about blogging or SEO, it might not be relevant a month from now, which drives me insane. I think, I was going to turn this into like a long idea or tip or strategy or whatnot, but I don't think I'm going to do that. I know.
Okay.
Let's just say it's a credit to you that you've engineered a discussion that will last, I think.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, before you go, I want to allow you to hit on something you shared with me kind of off air, was that you're a very firm believer that everyone should have a podcast. And, of course, owning a podcast production company, I'm all for that. But I really want to hear what your take is on that and why you're very adamant about that.
So many reasons. So many reasons. Let's just start from the top. I think everybody should hire Virginia eventually, but...
Thanks.
But, sorry, Virginia. You're not going to like what I'm about to say. I think everybody should edit their own show just at the beginning. Not forever.
Not going to disagree with you.
It's absolutely something that people should hire out. But especially like 3 episodes or maybe like 5 episodes or something, you must edit yourself. And I tell you why, you learn so much about the way you sound, the way you talk, your mannerisms, your ums and uhs and ifs and likes and all that fancy stuff. Your mouth clicking and your tongue clicking, and it's going to drive you insane. Starting a brand new podcast and editing your own show, it's going to be awful. But I swear, you do that for like 30 days or a couple of months, you will be a different talker, communicator to your spouse, your kids, your work, your job, your audience, everybody. So much value there. That's number 1. Number 2, it's free consulting. It's free consulting, man. There is absolutely no better way to get free consulting from people you look up to, people in your niche, your industry, your topics, authors, celebrities, YouTubers, anything. There's no better way to get in front of them than having your own podcast. If somebody knows a better way, well, I'll just challenge you, because there is not a better way. You could email people, you could text people, you could DM them on socials. You're not going to be able to get in front of people that you want to, talk with them, ask them questions. There's no better way than a podcast, period. I know this firsthand. It's just free consulting. And it's also beneficial to your guests. Don't get me wrong. It's not like you're taking advantage of people all the time. But man, what a gift. I got to have Seth Godin on my podcast, one of my favorite marketing authors. I got to ask him anything I wanted. How could I do that without a podcast? It would be so hard, so difficult. It's just amazing. Just a medium for that. Number 3, relationships and connections. I haven't spoken with Seth Godin again, but there are a lot of close friends I have now on the internet, not necessarily in my hometown, but close friends that I talk to on a weekly basis, maybe a monthly basis, that I met through the podcast at Podcast Movement. Maybe they were a guest. Maybe I met them at a different conference. I've been on other people's podcasts. My life has been enriched. These sticky notes that have notes to myself, half of these came from people that I met because of the podcast. I never would have thought this would happen when I started. Never. My podcast in 2009, this didn't happen. You know why? Because I hated it and I quit after like 6 months. It was just useless to me. I didn't see that there's more than just downloads or even like sponsorship money. I couldn't really grasp that. Even when I started doing a blog, like it took me years to figure this out, but I met people. I have friends. I was able to get in front of people I respected to have conversations with them and ask them questions. And you get my point. Number 3, I still think getting podcast sponsorships is the easiest sponsorships you can get, period. Easier. It's not easy, don't get me wrong, but easier than, well, YouTube's pretty easy these days too. It wasn't always like that. But it used to be blog sponsorships. Is that even a thing anymore? I don't think anybody does this, but people would try to get blog sponsorships or reaching out to brands and getting things. It's actually pretty viable. A lot more than people think with podcasting and YouTube, by the way. I want to toss YouTube into that one because brands like YouTube these days. There's way more, but I think those are the big ones. You learn a lot about how you communicate, which I think is a life skill, incredibly valuable. And just the relationships and connections you can make, even if you never earned a dime from them, I think are, oh wait, I got to sum this up. I think those are incredibly valuable. And here's the kicker. You can ignore everything I just said. Everything I just said. If podcasting was difficult, but it's not.
Gotcha.
If podcasting is YouTube, video is harder than audio. I don't care what anybody says.
It is.
It's just the risk versus reward. It's the yield versus the effort you put in is skewed with podcasting. Even doing interview shows, I would argue, is still easier than a lot of other mediums. It's just almost stupid not to have a podcast, if that makes any sense. You can do it with your phone. You can use Auphonic. Once you're making any money, you hire Virginia to actually make it good, right?
Right.
It's just, it's not worth doing. It's not worth doing. That didn't make any sense. It's worth doing. It costs very little, and there's a lot of potential upside. There you go. That's what I want to say.
Yeah. I love that because, that's how I started out. I was editing myself, hearing all of my spit sounds and weird pauses and ums. And I'm not sure that I've corrected any of that, but I figured out what the difference between conversational editing is and detailed editing and which software I preferred to get rid of the different mouth clicks and, which filters meant what. And some people are just absolutely not interested, no way, no how, to even look into software that'll do these different solutions. But it was very valuable to figure out just my own tendencies of the way I speak. And that's what made me a good editor for my first client, my second client, my third client. And now my team will tell you I'm not allowed to touch any episodes because they're all way better than I am. But, that is the progression. I got good to an extent. Then my team takes care of it now. But without those early days of struggling to figure out what to say, how to say it, trying to edit my own background noise out because I didn't turn off my fan, like just the stupid little mistakes that you make when you're early on at a new project, they make you better. So I don't disagree with anything you said.
Good. I like being agreed with. This is great.
This is great. A very agreeable conversation here.
Yeah, that was awesome.
A lot of times, let's say you follow Pete's advice, right? And you record your first 5 episodes, you edit them all yourself, you figure it out. If you enjoy this and you have a great plan on how the show is going to make you money and you want to continue editing your own show, and it's like a literal desire of yours, like Pete was saying, if that brings you joy and makes you excited, okay, great, do that. You have to balance, those money-making things with the things that are just integral to your personality that make you happy, right? But at some point, if you're like, editing is a waste of my time, I need to be spending more time in front of different people. I need to be speaking on stages. I need to be talking to my leads, whatever you need to be doing to actually grow your business. And you hate editing, or you're not good at it, or you're not willing to learn how to improve. That's where you outsource. You do what fits your personality, your time, your needs. Meditate or go sit in sun, be Pete or be Virginia, like whatever you need to do. Right?
I see you're pitching yourself. I see where you're going with this. Can I do it for you? This is awesome.
Yeah. Well, and I want to make sure we direct people towards your newsletter as well.
Yeah, I'll get to that. Don't worry. Here's why you hire people like Virginia and her team. ROI. At some point, you should not hire her, and you should edit your own show. Audio, video, doesn't matter. So you can learn things. You're getting a very high ROI from that investment. It's a pain in the rear. Editing, it's always going to be a pain in the rear, by the way, which is why you should outsource. But it's worth it in the early stages because of what you learn and what you hear and all this other stuff. By the way, short side note, I have really bad hearing. I got diagnosed finally after like 15 years of having horrible hearing. I finally got diagnosed and I need hearing aids and so on and so forth. The process of doing that is super annoying and painful for a lot of people, so I hear. But I was able to kind of nerd out and even have a little bit of fun with it because I got to understand a lot of audio related things because of what I learned in podcasting. If I had podcasted, I would have understood half of what this audiologist was like walking me through, and I got to help program my own like hearing aids or whatever. It's actually
awesome.
kind of cool. Anyways, at some point that ROI goes away. Mm-hmm. You've learned all you need to learn. And editing, you might get faster at it. I'm pretty fast at editing myself these days. But the ROI, the return you get on that is like nada. It's nada. This is why you hire out your editing, podcast, video, whatever it is. It's because at some point, and I would argue probably a really early point, honestly, that ROI just disappears. And then it's the easiest thing in the world to outsource. Mm-hmm. If you're listening to Virginia's podcast, like right here, it's so easy to reach out and get somebody to like make your show better with those low ROI activities. Yeah. I mean, it has to be done. That's the thing. That's why you hire it out. But you personally, your time is much better spent elsewhere after the first handful of episodes. There you go. That was a sales pitch right there.
There we go. There we go. Thank you.
I feel strongly about that. I do.
Thank you so much. Well, and I want to encourage people, if you are thinking about, okay, but what is the ROI of my podcast? There is a metrics tracker available for free download on podcastabundance.com. And so I want to encourage folks to check that out. And before you go, I want you to check out Pete's newsletter. So Pete, can you tell us where to find you, follow you, your coolest, latest endeavor? Because there's always something new.
Well, like I said, the big unknown for me right now is the personal brand. Is that what I want? Is that what I need? Can I wrap everything that I do up under this one umbrella of the personal brand? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to point people to actually two URLs, but they go the same thing, which is my weekly roundup newsletter. I follow a usually pretty specific format. It's fun and interesting and occasionally useful things for creators and entrepreneurs. And you can find it at either doyouevenblog.com. There's like an opt-in. I think it's at the bottom of that homepage, maybe. I don't even remember. Or my name, PeteMcPherson.com. Again, it's a simple opt-in. I don't spam. I might launch products like twice a year, and I'll send out some sales emails. You can just ignore it if you don't want to buy it. Other than that, there's no spam. I treat your information, your email address, with the utmost respect, and that's what I would point people to. So doyouevenblog.com or PeteMcPherson.com is where you can find that. Totally free. We'll see you there.
Absolutely. And thank you, Pete, for your time today. It's been so fun to chat with you.
Yeah, it's been a blast. Thank you, Virginia.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.